Okay, everyone, I think we will get started. Thanks again for joining us. If you've just joined us, my name is Tara Regan and I am Communications and Advocacy Manager at Arthritis Ireland. This week is National Arthritis Week and the theme for this week is Mythbusting. And we're delighted to have Louise Reynolds today with us. And the topic for our webinar today is Arthritis and Food, Everything You Need to Know. So again, as I said, it's National Arthritis Week and the theme for this week is Mythbusting, and we are addressing 5 prevalent misconceptions associated with arthritis. We have addressed 1 myth each day this week, and the goal is to raise awareness and empower individuals with the knowledge and skills to better manage their condition. So today is the final in our lunchtime series of webinars, but all of the webinars are recorded. And if you want to see the ones from Monday and Tuesday, they are recorded and on our YouTube channel, or you can watch them back on arthritisireland.ie. And if you're watching this one today and you have to dip out or you can't see the full thing, it will also be recorded and you will receive a link to the recording tomorrow afternoon. So as I said, we are delighted today to have Louise Reynolds with us. Louise is a CORU registered dietitian and she is the communications manager at the INDI. Louise is also a member of the Food Safety Consultative Council of the Food Safety Authority of Ireland. She has worked in research, the food industry, and as a freelance nutrition consultant for the last 30 years. Louise has also lectured on nutrition to primary school teaching students in St Patrick's College in Drumcondra for over 10 years. And she is a regular contributor to the Claire Byrne show on RTÉ Radio 1 and on Ireland AM for TV3. She also contributes to articles on a wide range of nutrition issues in the media. So thank you very much for joining us today, Louise. We are really delighted to have you with us. And Louise's webinar will explore the important role of diet in managing arthritis. We'll also look at dispelling some common myths and discuss the benefits of eating well to manage the challenges associated with arthritis. Just wanted to mention a little bit about our organisation. So for those of you that don't know us, we're the National Charity and Patient Organisation for people living with arthritis. We deliver a wide range of support, training, education and information. Our website is a great source of information and resources if you want to find out more about arthritis. There are lots of different types of arthritis and there's a lot of confusion about it. So arthritisIreland.ie is a great source of information for that. We have videos, podcasts, blogs, booklets, and we also run a wide range of self-management programs. We also have a helpline which is open from Monday to Friday, 10 to 4 p.m. And that is manned by staff who either live with arthritis themselves or who look after somebody or live with somebody or who care for somebody who lives with the condition. And the number is 0818 252 846. Just wanted to say a thank you to our sponsors for the week, AbbVie and Novartis. It wouldn't be possible for us to do this work without their support, so we do thank them. And also to mention that as a charity, we do rely on the generosity of the public to ensure that we can continue to provide our essential services and supports to everybody living with arthritis in Ireland. And there are lots of ways you can support the organisation. So you can make a once-off donation or register for monthly donations, and you can scan the QR code there on the screen. Or if you're feeling really up to a bit of a challenge, we are also taking part in the VHI Women's Mini Marathon this year, and we would love to have more people take part with us and raise funds for the organisation. So again, you can register on our website for that. Then just a couple of housekeeping points. Everybody except the presenters and speakers are on mute and cameras are off. We've allocated 30 minutes for Q&A. Just put your question in the Q&A function in Zoom and Louise will take as many of your questions as she possibly can at the end. Like I said, the webinar is recorded and you'll be able to look at it on our YouTube channel from tomorrow. So that just leaves me now to hand you over to Louise, who's standing by to kick off. And I just have our website information and helpline number there again. So thanks again, Louise. I'll hand over to you.
That's great, Tara. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And I am just going to share my screen. Just get started here. So can you see that okay, Tara? Is that filling the screen for everybody?
Yes, I can see that, Louise. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay, perfect. So, okay, so I'll get started, and I'm delighted to be chatting about arthritis with you all here today, and thank you all very much for joining us. So, as Tara said, I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm working with the INDI, which is the professional body for registered dietitians here in Ireland, the Irish Nutrition and Dietetic Institute. And we would if you ever meet a dietitian in a hospital, or if you're going to see a registered dietitian, we are the professional body who represents dietitians throughout the country. So what I'm really going to talk, I was kind of trying to think of so many ways to start this. There's really so much information and so much misinformation out there. So I can imagine if you are living with arthritis, or you're looking after somebody with arthritis in your family, it can be a little bit overwhelming. And you might kind of think, oh my goodness, like, what can I eat? I'm reading so much, or I'm hearing so much about, this food is good, this food is bad. So the first thing I saw this picture, and I thought, really, that this is what we absolutely want to avoid. We want to avoid people limiting their diet, cutting things out, so much so that their diet becomes really narrow, very, very, kind of limited range of foods. Because then you're running into problems with, not getting enough of the nutrients that your whole body needs for health, for dealing with your condition, for having a strong immune system. So I think a really nice way to think about it when you're thinking about making changes to your diet is adding in instead of taking out. And that might seem like a new concept to some of you, particularly when you think of dietitians. Often we get a bad rap, and people think that we're constantly saying, don't eat this, don't eat that, no, no, no. But actually, I think, being a dietitian and working with so many dietitians, it's really more about, look, what can you put in your diet to make sure that you're getting the best nutrition that you absolutely can. So that's what we're going to talk about today, kind of things you can add in instead of things you need to take out of your diet. So in terms of arthritis, I suppose we're talking about myth busting this week as well. And for National Arthritis Week, there are kind of, a lot of myths around nutrition and arthritis. And one of them that was focused on, you can see here, what I eat has no impact whatsoever on my arthritis. That's not true either. So we know that, in fact, whether it's individual foods or whether it's overall managing your weight, that can often be one of the most effective things you can do to manage your arthritis. Now, that particularly relates to osteoarthritis, where it is more common that people living with osteoarthritis may be carrying extra weight. And of course, that's not across the board. You have people with arthritis of all different body weights and shapes and sizes, people who are underweight, people who are living with extra weight, and people who are within the normal weight range. So there's no one size fits all literally in terms of arthritis. However, if you are living with overweight, there's a few things I'm going to talk about now that can help, because we do know that can help pain and flare-ups. Unfortunately, there's no magic arthritis diet which will solve everything. And I would really love to be here today and to be able to say to you, eat this food or stop eating this food and it's going to solve everything. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And to be honest, that really isn't the case for any condition. Diet is a very complex system of all of the different nutrients interacting when we choose the foods we eat. And I think the important thing as well is that eating is a sociable, enjoyable part of our day. And I think that's something that we really want to try and focus on. We want people living with arthritis to be able to enjoy their meals, get lots of nutrition in there, and support their health, rather than being anxious and worried about foods and limiting the kind of foods they're eating every day. So we're going to talk about small changes. It's not a kind of a dramatic overhaul, because again, we do know that doesn't work. It can often take about 21 days, we say, to create a habit, a new habit. So for 3 weeks. So that's kind of hard to do. It's hard to make changes. And again, if you could focus on one or two things. So by the end of today's presentation, if you think, well, there are one or two things that, look, I'll try that and that might work for me, that's really the way to go, rather than thinking you're going to be able to dramatically overhaul your diet, because it's kind of quite hard to do. So if we just talk for a second about those who are living with excess body weight, it can put extra pressure on our joints, and even a small amount of weight loss can really reduce the strain. So there have been calculations worked on, kind of the amount of weight and how much pressure that's putting on your joints. And in fact, it's been estimated that every 1 pound of extra body weight that you are carrying can put the equivalent of about 4 pounds of extra weight on your joints, particularly your knee joints. So for example, if you lost 5 pounds in weight, that would be equivalent to putting 20 pounds less pressure and weight on your joints. So it's not kind of equal. In fact, every time you lose a little bit of weight, that can really have a good benefit in terms of your joints. Similarly, our joints take a lot of pounding when we're walking. So in fact, even if you're, just on the flat surface, that every time you take a step and you're walking, your joints are taking about the equivalent of 1.5 times your body weight, not just your body weight, but with the pressure of walking on the flat surface. If you're walking uphill, that can be increased to about 2 to 3 times. So, our joints take a lot of pressure, over our lifetime. And of course, in some types of arthritis, it's kind of wear and tear. And then others, it's, arthritis is not due to weight or to wear and tear. It's due to, inflammation, so psoriatic arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. So all of these different types of conditions. But in terms of weight, it is important to know that if you are living with a bit of extra weight, it's worth kind of addressing that and seeing are there small changes that you can do, because it can certainly help to reduce pain and improve function. Also, I do acknowledge that it's not that easy to do. It's difficult to lose weight. Also, the environment that we live in at the moment is quite, you may have heard the term obesogenic. So really everywhere we go now, there are foods on offer in terms of, your kind of people are walking down the street with coffees and muffins, and the coffees have extra cream and flavorings and sugars and all sorts of things added. That's all quite new, really. That isn't the way a lot of us, if of my age and older, we didn't grow up like that, what there was kind of food at every turn. So it is a little bit more difficult to keep an eye on the amounts of foods that we're eating in the day. Also, portion size. I think this is something that dramatically changed. And I'm using this slide here from Safe Food because it's kind of really stuck with me. It's quite visual, that you can see the difference in size of a dinner plate from the 1960s right up until the last time I was there in 2009. I think that's probably the same size plates now. I don't think they've really got any bigger, although sometimes you can see really large platters that people would have their dinner on. So you can see that if you were to fill each of these dinner plates going up, so the diameter is kind of, the measurement across the dinner plate, so you can see they're getting bigger over time. So the first one, a full dinner in the 1960s might have held about 800 calories. Now, if filling a 12, it can be over 2 times as much, over twice as much. So certainly, if you are to be thinking about kind of, making small changes, using smaller dinner plates is probably a good way to start. So just keep an eye on that. And also, you don't have to fill your plate right out to the very, very edge. Again, some of us may have grown up with the idea that you had to clear your plate at all times, but just to keep in mind that that's not something that we have to do. We don't have to fill our plate. We don't have to clear it at every meal either. Get to listen to your own appetite and kind of finish when you feel full. These are the foods here that we tend to know are the foods that have excess calories, and they are enjoyable. They're great to have as an occasional food, but they're very high in fat and very low in nutrition, high in fat and sugar and low in nutrition. So these are the foods that we can cut back on that can help to give us good results in terms of not affecting the quality of our diet, but certainly can reduce the amount of fat and calories, and can help to maintain a healthy weight. Or if you are trying to lose a few pounds, this is where I would say target these foods first, if they are something that you have a lot of in your diet, because they certainly can make a big impact in terms of calories, but not in terms of nutrition. So we don't need any of these foods. They're extras that we like to have from time to time, but you certainly need to keep an eye on them in terms of managing a healthy weight. The next I would suggest is to choose whole grains. And this is a great tip really for everybody, no matter what your weight is, because They're really good sources of nutrients, but they're really also very high in fiber, and they tend to keep you feeling very full. So, you know, often if you're feeling hungry, you know, you're going to eat more. So you're kind of back into the kitchen and you're snacking during the day, but these whole grain foods tend to keep us feeling fuller. So again, these are the foods that would include, you can see some of them here, nice whole grain or wholemeal brown breads, high fiber cereals. You've got some seeds here, which would be included in breads and crackers. Also things like brown rice and brown pasta. They give us extra fiber, and that's really, really important for helping to help us keep full. So, you know, it's also going to help our gut health. So gut health is really important as well. And I know in certain types of arthritis and certain medications, you may have gut issues. So fiber is really, really important to support gut health as well. We need between 25 to 30 grams of fibre a day, which is what's recommended by the Department of Health. And we know in Ireland from national surveys, we're only actually getting about 15 grams on average per day. So there's a lot of room for improvement there. Probably for a lot of us listening today, we could all probably do with increasing the amount of fibre in our diet. So the way that you can do that is through the whole grains, also through the fruits and vegetables. And I've listed some of the foods here with a guideline of how much fiber they contain. So for example, you can see there a bowl of porridge, or if you're having something like Weetabix or Oatabix in the morning, which have about 3 grams of fiber. Then if you put a piece of fruit on that, so if you slice a banana on top of that porridge, or that could increase it to 5 grams of fiber. Then you could put on maybe a few seeds. You could see people now sprinkling more seeds on their breakfast cereal. And those milled seeds contain between 3 to 4 grams of fiber in a dessert spoon. So you can see how you could actually make quite a high fiber breakfast there by just making small little additions. Now, I would say that if you have a very low fiber diet, introduce the extra fiber slowly. Don't do it all in one go, because it can irritate your gut, and your gut needs a little bit of time to get used to the extra fiber. But you can see in there a slice of whole grain bread has about 2 grams. Some of them might have 3 or 4, depending. The more kind of seeds and the more nutty breads might have 3 grams per slice. So if you had a sandwich at lunchtime with 2 slices of bread, you know, that's another maybe 4 or 5 grams of fiber. And then if you're having some salad vegetables in that sandwich, you're adding it up. So it adds up during the day. You can see there a serving of your vegetables about another 2 grams. But it can be kind of hard enough to get to the 25 grams a day if you're not making whole grain and fruit and vegetable choices throughout the day. So it's definitely something to keep in mind to help maintain a healthy weight. Also, fruits and vegetables, which we're going to talk a little bit about later on, they're absolutely packed with antioxidants and lots of nutrients, really good for your immune system and your overall health. So in terms of what kind of diet for arthritis, I'm sure you've all heard people mention the Mediterranean diet. And I kind of put a little Mediterranean picture in here because I just thought we're still waiting for the spring and the summer to start here in Ireland. And I think everything is going to taste nicer if you're eating it in that sort of environment there, sitting by the sea under a lovely canopy and having your delicious and fresh food served up to you. But how can we do the Mediterranean diet at home, or what does the Mediterranean diet look like? Now, you're going to probably see with a lot of the photographs that I've included today, really bright colors. And that's something that I want you to kind of remember. You know, if you're thinking back to that, oh, I heard that dietitian talking about, you know, diet and arthritis, everything is really colorful. So the more color you have in your diet, the more chance that you are going to be kind of getting the whole range of foods and nutrients that we need every day. So do think of color as something to help you kind of make choices. And the Mediterranean diet, if you think to a lovely salad you may have had sometime on holidays, you know, lots of lovely fresh vegetables in there, salad vegetables, lots of lovely fruits. So even if we don't have the weather, we can certainly, you know, choose the elements of the Mediterranean diet that can help support our health. So this is really what they would tend to be here if I've listed them out for you. So colourful vegetables, fruits and berries we've spoken about there. The whole grains we've spoken about. So we've got the vegetables, we've got the fibre in there as well. Fish and seafood. So I'll talk a little bit more about fish. Really, really important, and particularly for arthritis, there is good science around the benefits of particularly oily fish and arthritis and supporting joint health. Monounsaturated fat. So again, monounsaturated, a little bit of a scientific term, but it's the type of oil or the type of fat. And again, the Mediterranean diet would focus more on using olive oil in the diet, whereas the more Northern European diets would tend to rely more on more saturated fats. So we know that the monounsaturated fats, such as olive oils, avocados would be another good source of those monounsaturated fats, as would nuts and seeds. And they are heart-healthy fats, but also in terms of arthritis, the evidence around omega-3 fish oils and around the olive oils is that they are a good type of fat to increase in your diet to support your health. Then we'll talk a little bit about yogurt as well. And also it's important, the last two there, the Mediterranean diet typically would include less processed meats and less sugary processed foods. Okay, so we've already spoken about the kind of processed foods, and you have a visual of what they look like. The processed meats there would be things like sausages, cured meats, kind of salamis. Those types of foods tend to be very high in saturated fat and lower in nutrition. So if you are going for red meat, a nice piece of lean red meat is a good source of iron. It's low in fat. But the more processed meats then do tend to be the ones that we recommend keeping a limit on in the diet. So if the next slide here, if I just go on to talk a little bit more about, sorry, I'll skip on to, oops, I'm just, I thought I had my fish slide next, so I've skipped, I'll go back to fish in a moment. Okay, so we want to talk about the fruits and vegetables, again, eating a rainbow. But that is reminded me of something that you may have heard of in terms of arthritis. Is one of the myths out there is around the nightshade vegetables. And people often ask me this, and they say, oh, do I have to avoid tomatoes if I have arthritis? Do I have to avoid peppers? So this is a group of vegetables. There are a lot more in there now. There are a whole range of nightshade vegetables. These would be the most common ones that you might come across. Goji berries would be, again, a very new food. You know, probably 10 or 15 years ago, we hadn't really heard of goji berries, but now they pop up in lots of things. The reason these foods are called the nightshade vegetables, why they're all together, is they contain a very small amounts of alkaloids. For example, solanine is one of them that you may have heard of. That's the one that's found in very green potatoes. And you've probably heard that, you know, if potatoes go really green, if they're left in a press for too long, they're not safe to eat. And that's because of the presence of solanine in them. So it's got very, very high. And that's true. Throw them out. Don't eat green potatoes. But in terms of the evidence around these foods, like, for example, now this slide here, obviously I took that from an American eggplant. We know it as aubergine here. The Americans call it eggplant. And those peppers are just kind of the regular peppers you'd add into a bolognese or into a salad. So these foods, they do contain some alkaloids. However, the evidence in terms of arthritis is not very strong. So if you feel that you want to try and cut these foods out, you know, you could try keeping a food diary, cutting them out a little bit. Some of them you may not even eat them very often. But the evidence is not there really strong that you need to avoid all of these foods. Okay, so it's not that something that you have to. For example, tomatoes are in so many foods. They're a really versatile food. They're really good food to include in the diet. So don't feel you have to avoid tomatoes in terms of arthritis. The evidence is not very strong. So this is the slide I was looking for, just to remind me to talk about the omega-3 fats. So it's really the fish oils and it's the oily fish we're talking about here. So you can see a nice piece of salmon on that slide, and above that, a lovely mackerel. Now, people might, you know, not want to be cooking mackerel. And actually, any of you who heard me, I was on talking to Claire Byrne on the radio there earlier, and we were talking a little bit about this. You know, the mackerel fillets that you can buy are a really good source of fish oils. And they're easy to have. You can have them in the fridge, have them with a sandwich or with a salad at lunchtime. Really good source of omega-3 fats. Also then, if you're cooking a salmon, piece of salmon, a really good source as well. Also things like trout, sardines are a great source. So tinned sardines, really, really handy. And so they're the kind of food you could keep in your cupboard. Tuna fish is an oily fish. However, tinned tuna, because of the processing, it doesn't have the fish oils in it. So the tinned tuna would not be a good source of fish oils. However, it's a really good lean protein to include in your diet, great source of protein. But unfortunately, it doesn't have the fish oils. Then if you're not somebody who eats fish at all, you could take an omega-3 supplement, and I'll talk a little bit about supplements later. But also on the other image I have there, just to remind me to talk about the other sources of the omega-3 oils, which are found in some plant foods. And one of those would be linseed or flaxseed. They're interchangeable, the names. And also chia seeds, which again are relatively new foods. Some people don't really like the texture of them, but they are a really kind of a powerhouse in terms of the nutrition they contain. They contain ALA, which is a type of the omega-3 fat, which is found in plant foods, and that can be then converted as well. So they would be a good food to include if you're not sure that you're including enough fish. The recommendations for oily fish would be even once or twice a week, would be a really good way to include those omega-3 fats in your diet. So if that could be one small change that you could make and think, okay, will I try and get that food into my diet every day? The other thing then you need to remember in terms of your bone health with arthritis, and again, these foods would be, we'd also see the vitamin C and calcium and vitamin D would also be part of the Mediterranean diet, particularly the vitamin D rich foods that you could see there again, fish and eggs. Calcium rich foods would be the more dairy based foods, and protein is also very important to support your bone health. Now, in terms of arthritis, there will be a number of medications that you may be taking, and you may be prescribed a calcium or vitamin D supplement in association with those, and that's absolutely great. And obviously take whatever is recommended by your doctors. But you can also have a look at your diet and increase those nutrients in your diet as well. So if we want to look at calcium, first of all, we tend to often think of our bone as being kind of, a solid, dead structure as such. However, bone is constantly turning over. New bone is being formed. Old bone is kind of being calcium and minerals are leaving your bone, and new bone is being formed. So even as we age throughout life, it's a really good idea it's really important that we have a good calcium intake, because that's going to support our bone strength as we age. So you can see there the dairy foods on the left of the slide. Milk, cheese, and yogurt. Butter and cream are not included here because they don't contain any calcium. So although they're made from milk, they don't contain any calcium. So we're just talking about milk, cheese, and yogurt, really good sources of calcium in your diet. And the recommendations are about 3 servings a day. So a serving would be a carton of yogurt, a glass of milk, or about an ounce size of cheese. It's equivalent to about a matchbox size of cheese. Again, the harder the cheese, the more calcium it contains. So on that slide, you can see the piece of brie in the middle. That's going to have less calcium in it than the Emmental, the harder cheese that's beside it there. So it's good in terms of calcium to include, whichever ones that you like. If you cook with them, it doesn't affect the calcium. So if you, are making a cheese sauce to have with your dinner, or putting a cheese sauce on top of a lasagna, that will still contain the same amount of calcium. And also if you go for low fat, they still contain the same amount of calcium. So it's a really good idea if that's something that you want to choose. On the other side then of the slide, I have some non-dairy sources of calcium. So often people will say, oh, I get enough calcium from other foods. However, you do need to be a little bit careful, because when you can see some of the foods there, you need to eat very large amounts of them to get the same amount of calcium. The soy milk there, so a lot of the milk alternatives, it's a good idea to mention those because they are becoming more popular. So if you're drinking an alternative milk, so if you're drinking a soy milk or oat milk, they don't naturally contain calcium. So you need to make sure you buy one which is fortified. So again, have a look at the label. Most of them now will have added calcium, but you do need to check that out, okay? So make sure that if you're going for an alternative, the same if you're going for a soya yogurt, to make sure it has added calcium in it. Something like all of the green vegetables there, they do contain some calcium, but you need to eat quite a lot of them, okay? So it's quite hard to replace having some dairy foods in your diet. Again, fortified orange juice, you can now get orange juice which has added calcium as well. I'd question the rice on this slide here. I don't know why rice is in there, but I couldn't quite cross it out. But rice is not really a great source of calcium. And again, fortified breakfast cereals. Fortified means that they've added nutrition. So some of the fortified breakfast cereals, have a look down the side of the box and you'll see that some of them have added calcium. But of course, if you're making them with milk, you're adding in the calcium there as well. Okay, so that's a calcium, really important for bone right throughout life. It's not just for babies, not just for children. We all need to have keep an eye on our calcium intake. And calcium works very closely with vitamin D. And I've taken this slide here. These images are from the new Department of Health recommendations, which only came out recently at the end of 2023. And they now the Department of Health recommend that everybody in Ireland takes a vitamin D supplement. The amount and how often you take it depends on your age and your stage of life, okay? So you can see here, for teenagers adults and older adults, it's 15 micrograms per day. For the teenagers and adults, it really is just between Halloween and St. Patrick's Day, depending on your skin tone as well. So somebody with darker skin, it's more difficult for your skin to produce vitamin D. So if you've got a darker skin tone, you need to take the vitamin D every day. If you've got a paler skin tone, you can just take it during those winter months. Okay, so it's kind of worth having a look at this. It's quite complex, lots of different amounts, but the bottom line is really you should be taking a vitamin D supplement every day, and particularly for the older adults over the age of 65. And certainly living with arthritis, I would recommend that you would take a vitamin D supplement every day. You can get vitamin D from foods, but it's really, really difficult to get enough. That's the problem. We get most of it from the action of sunlight on our skin. And of course, we also have to wear sunscreen, because we need to protect our skin as well from the risk of skin cancer. So, you know, between sunscreen and the difficulty of getting it in our diet from food, it's a good idea to take a vitamin supplement every day. You don't have to spend a lot on them. Whichever one, if there's a cheaper one available in the supermarket, they're absolutely fine. So just, you know, and again, have a look at ones you're already taking. If you're taking a multivitamin, the vitamin D may already be in there. The other nutrient that's really important for supporting our bone health is protein. And I think this is something that we, again, often think of protein being important for kind of sports people or somebody who's young and their muscle is growing. For children, you can see them growing in terms of their height, and they're growing in front of our eyes. However, we now know that right throughout, particularly as we age, protein is really, really important to promote our muscle strength and to prevent frailty as we get older. So muscles are obviously made from protein, and again, your muscle turnover is constant. So once you are a fully grown adult, it doesn't mean that you've got the same protein there all the time in your muscle. You need to keep replenishing and make sure that our diet has a good intake of protein. And in fact, new research now has suggested that as we're aging, we should be having protein regularly throughout the day in smaller amounts, rather than one very large protein-rich meal in the evening and like not so much protein at the rest of the day. So, for example, you know, protein-rich snacks for breakfast. What protein-rich food can you have at breakfast? You can have eggs. You could have yogurt. You could have, you know, you'll have milk on your cereal. So they would be good sources of protein. Having, you know, kind of a poached egg on whole grain toast in the morning, really good source of protein. Then for our main meal, if you're having any chicken or fish or lean meat, would be really good sources of protein. If you're vegetarian or vegan, the good sources of protein, then the plant-based sources would be lentils, peas, beans, and they're really good sources of protein. Also great sources of fiber, and they're also really cheap as well and really economical. So it's a good idea to have a couple of those maybe, you know, high kind of bean stews or casseroles, or even baked beans on whole grain toast is a really good tea time food to have, high in protein, high in fiber, low in fat, and very reasonable as well. So that's always something that's handy to have in the cupboard. Just to mention about yogurt, Greek yogurt is higher in protein than regular yogurt. So a regular yogurt would probably have about 4 grams of protein in 100 grams. And with a Greek yogurt, that could go up to about 8 or 9 grams. So it could be about twice as much protein. And again, proteins, I should say yogurt varies in terms of the types and what's available. Generally going for a natural unsweetened yogurt is probably the best one to go for. And if you're looking for more protein, you can go for the Greek yogurt. And then now there are more protein yogurts which have even more protein added. So you can have a look, and really it's whatever one suits you. They all will be good sources again of calcium too. And the other thing to remember are the nuts. So nuts are a good source of protein. They don't contain a huge amount because we don't eat huge bowls or plates of nuts, but they're a really good snack food to have. If you like nuts, they're good protein-rich snack. And also the nut butters. So peanut butter, again, would be one that's probably most common, but there are lots of different ones as well. Almond butters and cashew nut butters. They can add a little bit of protein. Things like hummus as well. Hummus is made from chickpeas. So again, the peas being a good source of protein. So that can be a good snack food to have some vegetable sticks and hummus, a little bit of extra protein in there as well. So just to keep in mind, the other thing about protein is it's very satisfying. So it tends to help keep you fuller for longer. Okay. So protein snacks are also really good if you're trying to maintain a healthy weight as well. Okay. So what about the supplements then? The evidence is really limited here. And the best evidence in terms of arthritis is and fish oils and curcumin, which is the one that's found in turmeric. So again, you know, not going for mega doses, and check with your GP. Try something, see if there's any improvement. Sometimes, you know, dietitians would say to me that are working clinically in clinical practice would say that patients might come in with a whole, you know, bag of supplements. They could be spending, you know, 50, 100 euro on supplements, and really they don't need all of that. Sometimes they might be doubling up. So do check with your doctor. It's worth having a look, and if you are taking supplements, to say, where is the evidence? Are they helping? Do I feel any better? You know, and make sure that you're not overtaking supplements. Also, some may cause gastric upset, and they may actually cause some kind of nausea or upset your tummy or bowel, and they may interact with medications, which is why it's really important to check with your doctor and show them what you're taking. In terms of the vitamins that do support our immune system and that there is good evidence around, the ACE vitamins, which are vitamin A, vitamin C, and vitamin E, they're the antioxidants, okay? So we may, you know, you hear about inflammatory diets and anti-inflammation diets. These vitamins, and you can see the picture there again, everything is really colorful. You've got the avocados there, you've got blueberries, lots of kind of peppers, red and orange peppers. So they would tend to be the more colorful vegetables, and that idea of eating a rainbow is going to make sure that you're getting all of those vitamins. Zinc then as well is another trace mineral. We only need small amounts of it. It's found in seafood, so another good reason to include the fish in your diet. And these are all kind of nutrients that together support your immune system. You hear people selling something to boost your immune system. We don't really want our immune system boosted, because a boosted immune system, that's when your immune system reacts to something and, you know, is trying to fight it. And we don't want our immune system to be constantly in a state of kind of fighting infections or fighting things. We just want a healthy immune system that, you know, can support good health. And that's really what your diet can do. If you're eating a wide range of colorful foods, making small changes and trying to include these kind of foods on a regular basis. Don't forget fluids. Okay, fluid is really important. And fluid helps to keep our foods to produce fiber. It needs fluid as well in association with that. So 8 to 10 glasses every day for men and about 6 to 8 glasses for women. And keep in mind that also includes, you know, a cup of tea, because you're obviously making that with water. If you have soups, there's obviously a lot of water has gone in there, or stews, a glass of fruit juice. It doesn't have to be just water, but if you like drinking water, it's a really good way to kind of keep a track of the amount of fluid that you're getting every day. Also, it reminds me to mention alcohol. You know, yes, alcohol is a fluid and a liquid, but it's something we also need to keep in mind in terms of maintaining a healthy weight, not only obviously all of the other risk factors from alcohol as well, but I just want to highlight this slide here. You can see that the calories in a regular glass of beer or in red or white wine can add up. And that glass of red wine there is 100 mils, which I can tell you is a very small glass of white wine. If you were pouring wine at home, we probably tend to pour twice as much as that. So that would be 2 units. And that would, you know, be double the amount of calories there. So do just keep an eye on that and keep in mind if you are trying to maintain a healthy weight. Also, don't forget exercise. I think I mentioned this earlier, and I just took this slide from the presentation yesterday, which the Ireland did as well around with the exercise and good diet really go hand in hand in terms of promoting good health. So I know it can be challenging with arthritis, and from listening to the physiotherapist yesterday, you know, she was talking about the benefits of exercise when you are living with arthritis. So it's something just to keep in mind, and maybe do go back and have a listen to that webinar from lunchtime yesterday. It's on the Arthritis Ireland YouTube channel. There's also a great new patient guide. If you haven't seen this, this is up on the website. And I was delighted to be involved in this with Una Martin, who's a specialist nurse working in the area of arthritis. And there's loads of information in there and also kind of little reminders and sheets you can fill in yourself to kind of have a read through exercise, diet, lifestyle changes, relaxation, all of the things that may help. So that's definitely worth checking out. It's available on the Arthritis Ireland website and also on our website on indi.ie. If you do think you need support from a dietitian, make sure you get a registered dietitian. That's what I would say. Dietitian is now a protected title by CORU, which is the regulator for health and social care professionals here in Ireland. And they will help to make sure that you make changes, but that you're not at risk of deficiencies. And that's the kind of message I want you to go away with today. You know, I don't want people cutting things out of their diet unnecessarily. See what you can add in, and, you know, keep an eye on kind of, you know, the foods that you like. You want to keep those foods in your diet. So that's really, really important. So if you want to find a dietitian, if you go to our website, which is indi.ie, that's the homepage you'll get there with that lovely smiling little girl there. And if you click on the Find a Dietitian section, and that will take you in here, and you can, you know, you can find a lot of dietitians now are doing online consultations since COVID, or you can find someone that you could go and see if that would help. But certainly also ask in your hospital, if you're checking in with your doctor or your team, is there a dietitian there? And do ask, and, you know, try and get to see a dietitian, because they are working in hospitals. And I know at the moment there's not as many as we should have there, but do see if you can get to see a dietitian as part of your team, because obviously if you're going to find someone privately, you're going to have to pay for it. So it would be great if you get to see somebody as part of your hospital visits. Okay, so I think I've kind of been a bit of a whistle stop tour there. I've flown through that. I'm going to stop sharing my slides now, Tara, and if there any questions have come in, I hope I've covered kind of everything there, but we can have a look and see if anybody wants to ask me any questions, and I'll certainly do my best to try and answer them.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Louise. I think actually you probably answered quite a few of the questions.
You hear me now? Okay. Okay, so that question was, should they cut out meat and dairy? So no, if you remember what I was saying about cutting out like a whole food group like that, and actually the evidence is not there. There's no evidence that dairy foods cause, you know, or can improve your arthritis, or that cutting out meat. Now, certainly the processed meats we were mentioning, you know, they are a good idea to reduce those foods in your diet. But red meat, lean red meat, is a good source of iron. So what I would do is kind of maybe keep a food diary, have a little notebook in the kitchen, you know, write down the foods you've had just roughly. And on the other side of the page, you can write down how your symptoms were that day, if you had a flare up. And then it gives you something to go back and look at. And then if you go to talk to your doctor, you can say, look, this is how I was feeling that day, and these are the foods that I've eaten. It can also help if you're going to talk to a registered dietitian to have that, you know, to look back on. So that might be something, but no blanket cutting out foods. The evidence is definitely not there to do that. So that's not a good idea.
Okay, great. I have another question here about somebody who said, yes, they're on a waiting list for knee surgery for osteoarthritis, and they've been told that reaching a healthy weight will benefit them post-surgery and their outcomes. However, they're really struggling in the evenings as they're quite hungry after a long day. So I suppose that's when they're finding it difficult, like not to, you know, to snack and things like that. So they're wondering if you have any suggestions maybe to keep the hunger at bay at night.
Yeah, and do you know what that is? They're not alone with that. That really, we know that that's a time that people, you know, we do tend to sit down after a busy day and you're kind of snacking. You might have a cup of tea, a few biscuits. So that's where the kind of high protein snacks throughout the day can help you feel less hungry in the evening. So if you eat well during the day, you're less likely to be feeling those kind of hunger pangs in the evening time. So I would certainly say, you know, kind of snacking on things like natural yogurt chopped up with fruit, maybe hummus and either crackers or vegetables. Maybe having like an apple sliced with peanut butter is really quite a nice snack, really full of nutrients and quite filling as well. But I know it's difficult to try and lose weight. And when you've been told that, sometimes people then feel quite anxious about trying to lose weight before surgery. But the things to do would be look at regular exercise and making small changes. Again, things like alcohol and the sweet and kind of calories perhaps to your diet, if there are foods that have a look at those. And the best of luck with their surgery as well.
Okay, thank you, Louise. There's a question here. Oh yeah, this is one I think that a lot of people can identify with. There's somebody here who said they're trying to make their diet healthier and they're trying to bring the family along with them, but they're finding it very difficult to encourage everyone else in the household to do the same, and they love ordering takeaways, which are very difficult to resist. Have you any suggestions? Help.
Yeah, I know. It is really difficult. And, you know, the takeaways are something that, you know, apart from the cost of them, they're really, really expensive. And, you know, I really feel they're an occasional treat because we don't really know what's in them. There tends to be, like a lot of restaurant foods, a lot of creams, butters, sauces, oils are added. So if you're cooking yourself at home, you've a lot, more control really over what goes into it. So you can make, I often see now on TikTok or some of the influencers talk about fakeaways. So you can kind of fake it and, you know, maybe make a nice curry at home. You can add in lots of extra vegetables, you can put chickpeas in there, lots of protein. And then you can have some papadums with that or have some naan bread that you can pop in the oven. You know, it's a little bit more effort. I understand that. And certainly if somebody's having a flare up and cooking and all of that can be difficult. A question coming in there about tinned mackerel and smoked salmon for omega-3s. Yeah, absolutely fine. Tinned mackerel is great. And smoked salmon. Another thing as well, actually, about tinned salmon is that you eat the bones of tinned salmon and the bones of tinned sardines. They're a good source of calcium, actually, if somebody doesn't like dairy food. So I didn't mention those earlier, but that just came to mind now as well. So that's something else to keep in mind. That's good.
That's a great one. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're actually eating the softened bones of the fish. So obviously you don't eat fish bones if you're eating a piece of fish, you pick them out, but if they're tinned, the softened bones are high in calcium. So that's a good thing to include there as well.
Okay, that's great. And there's a question here about whether apple cider vinegar is good to take.
No, well, the evidence isn't really there around arthritis. I mean, apple cider vinegar, it's kind of being, there's lots of claims made around it, around in terms of weight management as well. The evidence is not very strong, and this is the problem, I suppose, with certain foods, by taking a food out and looking at it in isolation, because we don't really eat in isolation. You know, all of our foods, we eat combined foods and composite foods and meals together. So it's quite difficult to do studies, but no, there's no benefit for arthritis. There's no strong evidence that would be a good idea.
Okay, thank you, Louise. And there's another question here, which I think is probably I'll let you answer it, obviously, but it's how do you work out what a correct or healthy weight is?
So there is a guideline. People may have heard of the term the BMI. Now, there are issues with it. It's the body mass index, but it's a way of really looking at your weight in relation to your height. So if people go on to, I know the Safe Food website, they have a healthy weight calculator, and you put in your weight and height, and really it just kind of works out a calculation to say, if your BMI is, you know, between about 20 and 25, that's a healthy weight. So it's kind of, you know, there's no point in looking at somebody else and asking what weight they are, because they're a different build, they're a different height, and so on. But roughly a BMI under about 25 is a healthy weight. Between 20 and 25, under 20 is underweight as well. And there are risks associated with being underweight too. I think it's important to say that. You know, we want people to have a healthy weight that they can manage to live well, support their bones and support their health. Okay, so if you check out a BMI, it's basically your weight in kilograms divided by your height in meters squared. But it's, if you look online, you can find a BMI calculator and put in your weight and your height, and that will just give you a guideline. Okay. Because I know, and you know, a lot of people now in Ireland, about 65% of us in Ireland are living with overweight or obesity. So it's more, the majority of people now are carrying a little bit extra weight. So you just need to, with arthritis, it can help to kind of get that back in check. It can certainly help with pain on your joints. Okay,
great. There's a question here about whether or not you would recommend taking joint supplements. I know sometimes they go hand in hand with the omega supplements, so maybe you might just...
Yeah, I was actually looking at some of the joint supplements before I was doing this webinar, and really there are so many out there. Some of them are really, really expensive. The evidence behind them is just not that strong. So I would say, you know, certainly the calcium and vitamin D are important for bones. The omega-3s are important for joints, and there is evidence behind them. Some of the joint supplements, the jury is really out on them. So I would definitely check with your doctor. They're quite expensive and they're not something everyone should be taking routinely. No.
Okay, great. Another question here about whether gluten can trigger inflammation. I think that's kind of complex area, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you see, gluten is obviously something that needs to be avoided if you have celiac disease. So celiac disease is a condition, and again, it's an autoimmune condition. So I suppose, you know, with some of the autoimmune arthritic conditions, people are thinking, oh, would there be a connection? There isn't a diet, a gluten-free diet that's going to improve arthritis, unfortunately. However, some people may have celiac disease and have arthritis, you know, so there can be crossovers there. And some people have a reaction to gluten, but they're not celiac. They have a sensitivity to gluten. So it's quite complex, but no, by kind of going to a gluten-free diet, for a start, the foods are a lot more expensive. And you may be cutting out other nutrients as well. So no, there's no evidence to go on a gluten-free diet purely for arthritis. But if you feel that there are symptoms from, you know, gut symptoms from gluten, it's worth checking that out. Ask your doctor and maybe go and see a registered dietitian to look at that more closely.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a couple of questions about vitamin K2 and whether or not people should take that as well if they live with arthritis. I'm not really familiar with vitamin K2, so
yeah, no. So vitamin K is involved really in clotting, and it's not something that routinely we would be recommending. You know, it's kind of one of those vitamins we need in quite small amounts. So you know, again, I'd have to, if it was recommended by your doctor, absolutely, and I'd have to look into that more. But no, it's not something that we would recommend routinely. Again, you know, sometimes you go into a pharmacy and there are so many supplements, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. And I think sometimes if you see it and you think, oh, I should be taking that, and then before you know it, you've got 4 or 5 different supplements. Just to think back to vitamin D is really important. Omegas, if you're not taking fish or the seeds in your diet, you know, it could help, and you might want to try that for a while and see if that helps. Calcium is important if you're not getting the calcium-rich foods in your diet. But after that, you know, unless it's been prescribed by your doctor, the evidence just is not that strong at the moment.
Yeah, okay. The other question that's coming in there, Louise, is about turmeric and whether or not that might be beneficial for people who live with arthritis. We come across that quite a lot, I think.
Yes, yeah, and the evidence is coming out there. There does seem to be. It's one of the components, the compound in there, curcumin, which does seem to have a benefit. Again, you can see turmeric supplements which have really high doses, or you can just use it in cooking, you know. So again, the jury is still out. There is more research going on. And I think that if people want to take it, if they like it and they're including it in their cooking, that's absolutely fine. You know, it may help. However, if you buy a supplement, for example, and you're taking it for a month or 2 and you're not seeing any difference, then I'd stop taking it, because that's really the length of time that you need to give something a go. There's no point in taking it for 3 years and spending a lot of money on something and you're kind of saying, oh, that doesn't work for me, you know. So once you're not interfering with your medication, once you've checked it with your doctor, you could try something, but it's not, the evidence at the moment isn't there to right across the board recommend it for everybody. I hope I'm being clear enough, Tara, when am I explaining myself well enough kind of with that? Yeah.
No, I think so. And I think you know, a lot of what you're saying there as well is like, these supplements are very expensive. If you're taking them for a really long time, like, they're going to cost you a lot of money. So you need to make sure it's working for you, essentially.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. They are very expensive. And you listen, everything these days is very expensive. Food is becoming really expensive. If you're trying to feed a family, our shopping bills are all going up. So you want people to kind of spend their money on maybe fruits and vegetables and things. Actually, something we didn't mention, and I just thought of there around flare-ups. You know, I'm talking about all these vegetables, and if somebody has a flare of arthritis in their hands, you know, the last thing they might want to do is to be cooking or in the kitchen. They can't chop vegetables, they can't open cans and all of that kind of thing. Frozen vegetables are really, really handy to have. And in fact, you can now get frozen chopped onions, which, you know, in one way you kind of think, oh my goodness, you know, can we not even chop an onion anymore? People are getting too lazy to chop an onion. However, they're really handy to have in the freezer. And particularly if somebody's having a flare up and they're really in pain, it's so handy to throw things in if you're making a casserole. You can get chopped up cubes of sweet potato and butternut squash. That's a really difficult one to cut. You know, it's really to peel a butternut squash. It's a lot of effort. So just frozen vegetables are really nutritious and the same, if not better than some of the fresh vegetables. They're packed full of nutrition. So I don't worry about, you know, kind of frozen being not good enough. They're really great and really good to have for a standby if somebody is having a flare up. So that's really important just to kind of mention that. Tinned vegetables are great as well to have on standby, all the tinned beans and things like that.
Yeah, great. Louise, we're going to leave it at that because I think you've answered as many questions as you possibly can. And I also think we're just coming up on time. So thank you so much again. That was absolutely fantastic. I think you certainly gave us all a really good overview of what a healthier diet looks like. I'm going to go downstairs now and measure my plates in a few minutes.
And also, listen, my final word is that you really want people to enjoy their food. And particularly when you're living with arthritis, you know, it's hard enough. There could be times when you're really not feeling well, you have a flare up. You want to actually be able to sit down, enjoy a meal with your family. Keep in mind, keep it simple. I think sometimes, you know, nutrition, people try to make it very complicated. There are people out there trying to sell you all sorts of things. You know, I just would like to give people that message to kind of keep it simple, go back to basics, look after your health, take your medications and keep exercising as much as you can, you know, and continued good health to everybody who's tuned in today. I hope that I've been of some benefit anyway to them. So they might take something from that webinar today. So
great. Thank you, Louise. I'm absolutely sure they will. And once again, I want to thank you so much for your time today. You've really been fantastic and you've given us such an insightful overview of healthier eating and diets, lots of inspiration there as well. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And also thank you to everybody who joined us here today. We really do really appreciate your support and your involvement. We mentioned earlier that you can watch the webinars back that we had earlier this week. So you can watch them on arthritisireland.ie. You can access them there. And you'll also get a link to this webinar by email tomorrow if you registered. I want to just thank again our sponsors, AbbVie and Novartis, and just to remind people that if they do want to support Arthritis Ireland, they can visit our website and make a once-off donation or a monthly donation. Or if you're feeling particularly inspired after Louise's talk today and you want to sign up for the VHI Minis Marathon and support us, please do so as well. And with that in mind, I just want to say thanks again to everybody for joining us, and we wish you all a very happy National Arthritis Week and a lovely afternoon. Thanks again, Louise. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.